on Iran. And all the while that is happening, Trump took America to war. He did it without consulting Congress. He did it without an authorization of the use of military force. He did it without a plan, without a strategy, and without what happened this weekend. Donald Trump spent weeks demanding Iran reopen the Strait. He threatened to bomb power plants. He threatened to bomb bridges. He issued ultimatum after ultimatum. And then this Sunday, he announced that the United States would begin blockading the very strait he was demanding remain open. What follow Ukraine? This is not a strategy. This is not a diplomatic solution. That is not a plan. That's chaos on Iran. And all the while that is happening, Trump took America to war. He did it without consulting Congress. He did it without an authorization of the use of military force. He did it without a plan, without a strategy, and without so much as a clear definition about what winning even looks like. That's the war that Trump is putting us into. Now, 44 days later, everything is worse than when Trump started this war. His leadership of the war might as well be called Operation Epic Failure. The Strait of Hormuz, chaos. The Iranian regime, still standing. Gas prices at the highest level in years. Iran's nuclear ambitions, exactly the same. American credibility in the world, worse. This war planning is an epic failure, and it all belongs to Donald Trump. Just look at what the war's done to the American economy. Energy costs surged in March, led by a more than 20% increase in the price of gasoline, accounting for roughly 3/4 of the entire month's inflation increase. Gas prices remain above $4 a gallon nationally. Oil is over $100 a barrel. And U.S. inflation is soaring on higher energy costs, far ahead of where it was before this war started. Companies are adding fuel surcharges. Small businesses across the country are being squeezed between rising costs and customers they cannot afford. Now it looks like, as long as oil prices keep driving up inflation, interest rates are going to remain higher for longer. This is the Iran war tax American families are paying every time they fill up the tank, every time they buy groceries, every time they book a flight.
Up to this point, the argument is building around a very specific pressure point. Not just that the war is failing, but that ordinary Americans are already paying for it in real time. Notice how the focus shifts from abstract foreign policy to gas prices, inflation, and household strain. That's intentional. It reframes the conflict from something distant to something hitting people every single day. The core accusation here isn't just strategic failure. It's that there was no clear objective from the start. And that raises a bigger question. If there was no defined win, how can there be anything but loss?
This is one of the very worst military and foreign policy operations that the United States has ever taken. And now let's talk about the Strait of Hormuz, because nothing captures the chaos of this administration's non-strategy better than what happened this weekend. Donald Trump spent weeks demanding Iran reopen the strait. He threatened to bomb power plants. He threatened to bomb bridges. He issued ultimatum after ultimatum. And then this Sunday, he announced that the United States would begin blockading the very strait he was demanding remain open. What folly! But it gets worse. While all this was playing out, the Trump administration was quietly allowing Iran to sell its own sanctioned oil on the global market, actively financing the war being waged against us. Trump is financing the war that Trump started against. Trump is giving finances to be used against us in the war he started, because they had no other way to keep gas prices from rising even further. And guess who gets a hall pass to sell gas and oil? Another active enemy, Russia and Putin, who are giving battlefield intelligence to Iran to target and kill our troops and use the billions they get from the Trump oil sanction exemption to finance their war of aggression against our ally, Ukraine. This is not a strategy. This is not a diplomatic solution. That is not a plan. That's chaos, and it's an epic failure. Talks with Vice President J.D. Vance and Iranian officials in Islamabad fell apart in less than a day, with each side blaming the other. And what has the Republican majority in this chamber chosen to do while this dramatic disaster of a war that Trump started unfolds? Absolutely nothing. They're silent, and their silence is deafening. There have been no hearings. There have been no investigations. There have been no attempts to stand up to Trump. Well, our service members deserve better than this. Republicans had 3 opportunities to stop this war by passing a war powers resolution. Republicans have fallen in behind Donald Trump, and they own Operation Epic Failure as much as Trump does. And that's why, again this week, Democrats will force a vote on a war powers resolution to stop hostilities in Iran and return the power to go to war back to Congress, where it always should be. Republicans will once again have the chance to do the right thing and vote to end this war. To my Republican colleagues, history is going to record this moment. It's going to record whether you stood up for the Constitution or whether you handed your power away to a president who threatened to wipe out an entire civilization and then turned around and blockaded the very strait he demanded Iran open. And this chamber is not a spectator. Congress must do its job and make sure that no president, not this one, not the next one, can drag this country into war alone and without consequence. It's a time to put an end to Operation Epic Failure. On Pope Leo.
What makes this speech land isn't just the criticism. It's the structure of the case being built piece by piece. It starts with process, no congressional approval, no authorization, no defined objective. That alone raises constitutional concerns. But then it escalates into outcomes: higher gas prices, rising inflation, global instability, and no visible strategic gain. And that progression matters, because it shifts the conversation from "was this legal?" to "was this worth it?" and ultimately to "is this working?" The answer being implied here is no on all 3 fronts. One of the most striking moments comes with the Strait of Hormuz contradiction. The argument points out a direct reversal, demanding the strait be opened, then blockading it. That's not just a policy disagreement. That's being framed as evidence of inconsistency at the highest level of decision-making. In political messaging, moments like that are powerful because they're simple, visual, and easy to understand. Open it, then close it. Demand access, then restrict it. That's the kind of contrast that sticks with viewers. Then the speech takes a sharper turn into something more serious: the idea that policy decisions may be indirectly strengthening adversaries. The claim about allowing sanctioned oil sales while engaged in conflict raises a deeper concern about coherence. Whether viewers agree or not, the implication is clear: actions taken to stabilize one problem may be worsening another. And that tension between short-term fixes and long-term consequences is at the heart of many foreign policy debates. But perhaps the most politically significant part comes at the end, where the focus shifts away from the president and onto Congress. Because now the argument isn't just about one leader's decisions. It's about institutional responsibility. Silence becomes part of the story. Inaction becomes a position. And suddenly, this isn't just about what was done. It's about what wasn't done. That's where the stakes expand. This becomes a question about precedent. If Congress doesn't act here, what does that mean for future conflicts? For future presidents? For the balance of power? And that's the underlying takeaway the audience is being pushed toward. This moment isn't isolated. It's a test case, a test of oversight, a test of accountability, a test of whether constitutional checks actually function under pressure. So the real question for viewers isn't just whether they agree with the critique. It's whether they believe the system is working the way it's supposed to when decisions of this magnitude are made. And that's where you come in. Do you think this was a failure of leadership, a failure of strategy, or a failure of oversight, or all 3? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this breakdown useful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives like this.